It's not easy. We are in a hole, but the first rule of holes is, when you're in one, stop digging, which is what Canada should do right now, okay? The tar sands are the second biggest pool of carbon on Earth. Now, they're small, as Professor Weaver reminds us, compared to the total amount of coal on the planet, but they are very large compared to the amount of space we still have in the atmosphere. If you could somehow tonight burn off all the tar sands in Alberta like that, which thank God you can't, but if you could figure out how to do it overnight, you would raise the atmospheric concentration of CO2 from its current 390 to about 540 parts per million, okay? There's a lot of carbon up there. There's a lot of carbon in a lot of other places too. It's not like if we stop the tar sands, we're going to solve global warming. But conversely, if we let them continue, if we tap them heavily, then we will not be able to deal with climate change. How do you know that? You know that because the Canadian government had to back out of the Kyoto Treaty last year because there was no possible way for it both to keep its word to the rest of the world and to mine the tar sands. That's how much there is up there, enough to overwhelm the commitments that Canada made, even in that very, very weak and tame and moderate treaty signed 15 years ago. It needs to stay in the ground, just as we need, Brazil to make sure that the Amazon stays a forest. It would be, economically advantageous, at least for certain people in Brazil, to go cut down the whole rainforest. Okay? They'd make some money doing it. The equivalents of there are equivalents of the people who want to mine the tar sands in Brazil wanting to cut down the tar sand, wanting to cut down the forest. But so far, not perfectly, but with some resolve, the Brazilian government has done what it can to slow that process down. That's what we need Canada to do here. It won't stop climate change if you do it. There are 1,000 other fronts. At 350, we fight on them all the time. So, we're fighting coal ports along the Pacific, including in British Columbia. We're fighting coal plants in Kosovo this week. We're working on subsidies to the fossil fuel industry all over the world. We've got 100 fights going on at any time. But this was a very, very big and important one. And I'm going to finish by saying that it seems to me it was important and is important for you to do this for reasons that, are not connected only to the environment. I'm not a Canadian, so I have no real right to say this, but it does seem to me that there's a certain kind of something to do with the spirit of this country that is at risk too, as this is going forward. When I was talking about my memories of my boyhood in Toronto, one of them, very strongly, was the sense of strong community that existed then. And although I had no way in fourth grade to sort of think about that and contrast it with the rather more individualistic life of the United States that I returned to, the thing that crystallized it in my mind was that in those days in Toronto, in neighborhoods like Leaside anyway, if you wanted to cross the street and you were a kid, all you did was just hold out your hand in the middle of the street like that, and you sort of created a crosswalk, and cars would stop either way and let you cross, okay? I don't know if that happened here or not, but that's what it was in Toronto, okay? Well, when we moved back to greater Boston area, I was damn near run over about 15 times the first week I was there, okay, because nobody was stopping for anybody, and that stuck in my head. What also stuck in my head was that though Toronto was in certain ways parochial, there was a very different, larger sense afoot in Canada. This was, in the mid-1960s. In 1967, and Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister, and the great event, at least for us kids, was that Expo 67 had come to Montreal. And this sense of being dramatically open to the rest of the world and eager to be a part of it and fully capable of being a part of it and joyful at being a part of it is a great contrast to a country that has to pull out of treaties and a country that has to have its leaders talking on and on about foreign radicals and foreign extremists and all the... That's sad to hear. That's the opposite of being confident and a part of the world. That's sad. Let me just finish by talking for a minute about those civil disobedience. I was talking about this morning as we were having these planning meetings for about the civil disobedience stuff that we did, because it raises a couple of points that I think bear on this. It was quite interesting, this civil disobedience action that we did, for two reasons that stick in my mind. One was, when we sent out the letter in the first place, we said, you know what? And Naomi signed right, she was the first person to sign this letter. She and George Poitras, the first two people to sign on. And we said, we don't want college kids to have to be the cannon fodder for this, okay? They've been the leaders in the climate movement for the most part, have been young people of all kinds. But if you're 22 right now, you really don't want to get an arrest record, you know? It's not what you want or need in our current economy. One of the few virtues of growing older is, after a certain point, what the hell are they going to do to you? You know? And I'm looking around the room and I notice that there are a few contemporaries of mine in this, you know, in this hall. Sort of keep this in mind. We did not ask people how old they were, because that, you know, by my kind of old creed would have been a kind of rude thing to do. But we did ask them, who was president when you were born? Okay. And the two biggest cohorts came from the FDR and the Truman administrations, okay? Somebody translate that in Canadian. It's back before Pearson. I don't know. There you go. Mackenzie King, okay? That's the, you know, the same, that's the generation. On the last day, there was an 86-year-old guy arrested with a sign around his neck that said, World War II vet, handle with care, okay? He was from the Harding administration. He was from a long time ago, okay? So that was part of it. It was beautiful to see this multi-generation. The other thing that was important, and this I really want you to hear, we told people, if you want to come get arrested, you need to be in your Sunday best. You got to be in a necktie or a dress or something, okay? And the reason was, we wanted a visual way to say, we are not the radicals in this fight, not in any way, okay? We're just trying to have a planet and a democracy, something like the ones we were born into, or at least the ones we envisioned, you know? The radicals work at Enbridge and at Kinder Morgan and at Exxon and at all those places. And the depth of their radicalism is defined by the fact that they are willing to alter the chemical composition of the atmosphere. No human being has ever engaged in a project that big before. I mean, if you were writing the next Bond film or something, you know, it's like, give me $10 trillion or I will alter the chemical composition of the atmosphere, you know. That's what they get up each day, and without necessarily thinking about it in quite those terms, that's what they do to make money. So don't forget that. And don't forget either that though it is not at all clear we're going to I'm confident you guys are going to win the fight against these pipelines. But it's not at all clear we're going to win the fight against global warming. We don't know. We've waited a long time to get started. There's scientists who think we waited too long. And there are political scientists who think the odds are simply too great. There's too much money out there. And I'm in no position to argue with them because we've lost more often than we've won in the last 20 years. But we are building just as fast as we can this grassroots movement to try and do something about that, to try and see if we have time and energy and love enough to turn it around. We do not have the money to stand up to these guys. We're going to need different currencies to work in, and they are passion, and they are spirit, and they are creativity, and on occasion we're going to have to spend our bodies too in order to make it come out okay. I don't know if it's going to come out okay. I do know from having traveled the world over the last 4 years, spewing carbon behind me, that all around the world there are people who are now engaged in this fight, many of them in places that have done nothing to cause this problem. Okay? And it is always an honor to be in those rooms full of those people. And it is a great honor to be here with you guys tonight to say thank you for what you've done, and to say, without any guarantee that we're going to win, to say it'll be an enormous honor just to get to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in the years ahead and see how this comes out. So thank you all so much.